Minister of Economy, Mr. Pierre Fitzgibbon, who is also Minister of Energy, and also with the CEO Canada of GE, Madame Heather Chalmers. I saw some of those questions and I saw some of the potential answers, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be very interested by the conversation. So with no further delay, Heather, the floors and Minister, the floors is yours.
Okay, great. Thanks for having us both here today. More importantly, you, because I get to ask the questions and you get to answer them. So my first question is, today's thematic program at COP28 is focused on finance, trade, gender equality, and accountability. And as you may have heard in the introduction, that's a tall order. And you've also spent a tremendous amount of your career in finance. What role does public and private partnership play in the energy transition? And it's better be a good answer because we're doing some things together.
Well, hi, happy to be here with you, Heather. Well, first of all, I think it's complementary. I feel that given the energy transition, given the large infrastructure investment, given the innovation that is required to be getting more energy efficiency, I think the government's role is twofold. One is that we have to signal where infrastructure investment needs to be done. And because they're largely huge investment, I think it's important for us to be involved at the beginning to get the first investment done. But we need the private sector to scale it up and to sometimes get it more cost efficient. So I think government from that perspective, where public money needs to be there to signal where the policies, where the investment needs to go. But also importantly, I think the innovation now is going to become more and more important as we want to be more energy efficient. This will come from not closing the lights at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but getting more intelligent into how we manage our grid, how we manage the usage of energy, whether residential, whether commercial, whether industries. And for that, we need to promote innovation. And to promote innovation, we need to be, I think, involved at the beginning, at the outset, to when a project gets started, when entrepreneurs come with ideas, I think government needs to seed the investment. But again, after that, the scale up and how we get that to be more effective, I think we need the private sector. So I think both instances, infrastructure or innovation, government needs to be there by the beginning only.
I'll just maybe, am I allowed to riff on this? I would say we commend the Quebec for giving certainty and those signals to private industry so that we can make the necessary investments in supply chain and in the people resources, which is becoming more and more acute over time. And in terms of your comment around collaborative innovation, technology is only useful in the context of where it's going to be used. So making sure that we're developing it with, understanding those local needs is more and more important. So I think you're absolutely on the right track, and thank you for that. My second question is, after the 2022 provincial election, you originally had the Ministry of Finance, and now you have the Ministry of Energy added to, one could call, a super portfolio. Why, how did that come to be? And the second part of that is, what has it allowed you to do differently that different jurisdictions around the world can learn from related to the energy transition?
Yeah, actually, it was not fine. It was economy and innovation, which was my prior ministry. It's okay. So I was doing that. And in the first mandate, this is my second mandate. And clearly the energy transition for Quebec became very important to be our economic lever, but also obviously what we could do to decarbonize the economy. So therefore, energy is becoming center to the economic development. So either could have gone to environment or could have gone to economy innovation, which is not the same thing, of course, but Benoit Charette, who's here with me here, obviously at the CUP, are working very closely together. So environment and economy and energy are very, very, very tightly together. We need to use our competitive advantage in Quebec because 99% of our grid is green. So therefore, and we have ability to have a greener grid, We have a tight supply-demand situation right now, so we need to be very careful as to how we allocate our green grid. And we need to focus on both creating wealth for our society, but also to make sure we decarbonize our economy. Because although we're 99% sourcing of green energy, our consumption is not quite the same. Of course, it's a 50-50. So we have to balance, and that's very, very difficult. We have to be rigorous how we balance the allocation of our green grid. And I think that, I'm a believer that decarbonizing the economy will create wealth for our society. So therefore, we're looking at projects that can do both. And frankly, I think we are in a good position.
A build on question based on an earlier discussion that we had. I think you're also doing a great job in terms of anticipating bottlenecks. And how do you remove those bottlenecks, whether that's legislation or otherwise, to speed up, one could argue, is a very aggressive trend, both additive as well as the transition element of the energy system in Quebec?
Yeah, we appointed Michael Sabia, for those who are in Canada. Michael used to be the head of Caisse de dépôt and was the deputy finance minister in Ottawa, actually. So Michael now manages Hydro-Quebec, and he put together his action plan about 3 weeks ago. And the action plan calls for basically, and it's not uncommon to hear that here in COP28, Hydro-Quebec needs to double up by 2050 if we want to decarbonize to be net zero, which is obviously the objective. Furthermore, I think given the propensity to have increased industries that want to be greener to come to Quebec, given our grid, we have this unbalanced situation. So therefore, we are aiming on the power side to get 8,000 to 9,000 megawatt by 2035. This should allow us to be where we want it to be, because we need to be at minus 40% to 37.5% of GHG emission by 2030. So moving forward to 2035. So with 9,000 megawatt, we'll be able to largely decarbonize our economy and largely creating new industry sectors. So therefore, it's very important to find the ways to get to that 9,000 megawatt. And the primary driver will be energy efficiency. And that's where we're going to be focusing a lot. Also, we need to your point, we have a unified grid right now in Quebec, and there's holes in it, or there's places where there's availability of capacity we can incorporate. So therefore, we're going to be looking at wind farms in location where we've got transport availability. And there's probably 3,000 megawatt that we have currently available. So we'll maximize that. We'll maximize the energy efficiency. Then, of course, we'll need to invest, hopefully with you, invest into getting more transport. Because Quebec, like a lot of Nordic countries now, there's a lot of wind up north. We need to get the connection to the city in the south. So we need to work on that kind of, and we have our two basically swimming pools, Churchill, and we have James Bay. So we need to connect those to the urban area, and that's going to be requiring a large investment. Michael has announced that we're probably going to be spending 150 billion in between now and 2035, and just in energy development, which is huge.
And I don't know if you noted there, because I think it's an important point to just make sure that we stop on, is it's not just about building more transmission and distribution. It's optimizing what you've got today and using different tools. There's grid orchestration tools. There's also building energy efficiency to unlock potential with what you've got while you're continuing to build out. I'm going to ask one question more, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience. So I'm giving you a chance to prepare your questions. And you've talked about the fact that Quebec has a very clean grid today. And in fact, I think you have the lowest carbon intensity per capita in North America. And this is attractive, or on the surface, it should seem attractive to industry to want to invest. When you are going out to different countries or different companies, is that green electron resonating? And are you getting the investment that you hope for in the timeline that you were hoping for?
Yeah, clearly. I think the advantage Quebec, I would say, is largely, well, the fact we have Investissement Quebec, you saw Hubert Bolduc and a lot of people here. I think we have a great resources available to sell Quebec outside Canada. And I think that one of the first attractiveness is the green grid, low-cost green grid, talent, universities, and so forth. So I think we've been able to, clearly given our critical minerals, we are been able to develop the what we call the EV industries, which we were absent of up to 3 years ago. Because we do have the critical minerals, largely nickel, graphite, and lithium, given we have our green grid, I think we've been able to attract a lot of foreign companies to come here, because those who want to have traceability and who have to have green products, because they'll be ultimately green premium, want to come to Quebec. So therefore, it allowed us to build this integrated supply chain in the whole EV side, which I think is going to be providing a lot of wealth for our community. It's going to be probably a file that will be in effect for decades to come. And there's other as well. I think of steel mill. Now, given that the steel will require high purity iron, but if you look in the world where the high purity iron, I don't know if Mappy is here from ArcelorMittal, but in Labrador, Newfoundland, and Quebec, this is where the highest purity exists. Therefore, at one point in time, maybe we'll have in Quebec a green steel mill. So I think there's a lot of potential there, and that's why we need to be very cautious as to where we select the projects and how we can generate more green grid with green power, which I think we can do effectively.
So I'm hearing lots of demand, and you're almost curating the demand.
Yeah, right now we do, but that's the same as you said. I think we need to be more effective, and I believe in technology. I look at my friend there, Sam from Brainbox, who's a great contributor to energy efficiency. So innovation has to be at the core, because we need to consume better. Because in Quebec we tended to be not to look at energy in a way we should look at it. If we look at Europe, for example, so I think there's a lot available in innovation, a lot available in optimizing what we have, and the working company like yourself, I think we can be providing increased energy at low cost.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna see two things, and then I'm gonna go to the audience.
Yep.
So I will have a question on your transformation, your energy transformation valley. So I'm not gonna say it in French because I will butcher it. I'll let you do that. And then I may dabble into Indigenous partnerships. So with that, I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna go to the audience. I would ask, if you do have a question, to just maybe stand up and introduce yourself before you ask your question. Okay. Well, we're going to go to the your energy transformation valley. And what, oh, we do have a question. Okay, Sam from Brainbox.
Since he singled me out, and I was the first victim, I'm going to come back with a question. Quebec's got a pretty unique situation in terms of its infrastructure, energy infrastructure. And in a way, we're able to transform in ways that are also unique. But I wonder what we can do to show the rest of the world what can be achieved in our context, but some of the exportable technology. I mean, it's a bit of a lab, right? A bit of a unique lab. What can we do to showcase to the world what we're able to achieve in that lab of ours?
We need to bring you at CUP. No, but it's a good point. I think we talked about it this morning with the Quebec delegation. I think in Quebec we are a leader in the green energy. But we sometimes are not really promoting it. Maybe you shouldn't help us, but
Happy to.
But we need to do better, because I think innovation is clearly something we can export. We have talent that we can export, and I think that the way we manage our grid. I know Quebec is a very company that is performing very well, and I think it's a unique model. So therefore, I think we need to promote that better in the rest of the world.
The other people I would just add, and we've talked about this, I think Invest Quebec, that team is spectacular. Their willingness to work with you, to understand what you're trying to solve for and remove barriers is one of the reasons that we do have a very strong footprint in Quebec. It just doesn't happen on its own. There's a lot of pieces that have to come together in addition to the green electrons and the demand to make it work. Because there are other competing jurisdictions that want investment in their geographies. So let's go back to the innovation zones, and in particular the energy one. What are you hoping to solve? How are things going? Fast forward 5 years.
Well, we have Mr. KM there. He invented batteries 15 years ago. So that's why we're strong in EVs.
We met at the airport
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we
yeah.
run into each other.
He's a
Hello.
battery, he's a walking battery. So no, I think the concept is the following. In Quebec, we're 8.5 million people, 8.6 now. So we need to focus where we have a chance to be world leader. So this concept of innovation zone is actually copied from the German model, the Fraunhofer, if you're familiar with that, where we take some thematics where we think we can shine. For example, aerospace, we're probably, we claim after Toulouse and Seattle, the third largest hub of aerospace, and therefore we have a zone there where we have the large companies, order takers, we have the universities. We need to put together the academics, applied fundamental research, large corporation, startups, SMEs, and I think in the EV side, given actually, I'm serious about what Karim has done on the research side. 15 years ago, he was at the Hydro-Quebec running the research at Hydro-Quebec. Because of him and other people, of course, we were able to shine from an applied research perspective, which allowed us, given our critical minerals, given our green grid, to say, okay, this is a thematic there. We can shine worldwide. And frankly, with all modesty, I think Quebec can become the center of battery components. And we're not going to make cars, maybe one day, but that's not, to me, the issue. The issue is that if we can build in North America a cluster of knowledge where you make anode, cathode, there's no other place in North America you can do that. So I think the concept of the innovation zone is to pick thematics where Quebec can shine. And I think that there ain't going to be 15 of those. Right now we have 3. We have basically quantum computer, which is computing, which is good software and hardware, because of one of the top researcher in the world is actually in Sherbrooke University making hardware on the quantum side. We have microelectronics, and given the CHIPS Act in the US, I think we have a chance to join the Albany Alley, we call it, and now we have the EV. So I think we need to focus, and I think we can focus on areas where we can shine.
Focus and finish, I always say. Focus and finish. I'm going to pause if there are any questions from the audience. Oh, there's one at the back there.
Good afternoon. Ahmed Hanafi, Director of Energy at Dunsky. I'm curious, Minister, what keeps you up at night in terms of not in general, but in terms of, so we have a plan now. Hydro-Quebec has a pretty, well laid out roadmap with, with costed investments and an action plan. What are the barriers that keep you up at night that you think Quebec and more broadly need to work on to make those plans play out in reality?
It's a good question. I think the key to me is execution. We have, given the advantage Quebec in some areas, universities, green grid, critical minerals. There's a lot of projects that are available. The speed at which we can, from a regulatory perspective, the speed at which we can execute, the speed at which Hydro-Quebec can increase the power is going to be the most stressful element. Although I say that, in the meantime, I speak to a lot of CEOs in the world, and they tell me, we're going to be patient. We understand how Quebec is organized. We understand the stability geopolitically and also from a resource perspective. So we'll be patient because we know you're going to be delivering. So the plan that we've announced with Quebec is very aggressive, ambitious, although it's going to take some time. But that's probably what's stressful, because right now the world is chasing the green energy. The world is chasing because of the zero carbon, the net zero pathway is really something that everybody wants to do. And there'll be a lot of community that will be providing green energy. Nuclear is going to be very, we talked about that earlier today. Nuclear is going to be part of it. So therefore we need to speed up, but we need to do it in the right way, because we have to be rigorous. We have a First Nation issue. You're probably going to talk about that, but I think to answer your question, speed and execution.
One of the things that keeps me up at night is workforce. So do we actually have the enough skilled laborers to install the EV chargers, the heat pumps, deploy those transmission lines, build those wind turbines? What is Quebec's plan on that front?
It's a good question. We have the same issue. Michael Sabia has stated, I think, that you needed 35,000 construction workers in the next 10 years to fulfill the $150 billion expenditure program. Actually, we launched about 3 weeks ago. Where are you based? Are you based in the Montreal? Okay. But we launched this program, construction. We shortcut the construction regulation. So far, we had about 15,000 people applied for it. Young people applied for it to become technicians. So clearly, construction we're going to need to double up, and it's going to be an issue. But I think we got the program. The problem is that they don't want to deplete other resources as well. The Quebec demography, the Canada demography is about plus 1-2%. We have some immigration that is available as well. So doing immigration, we need to control in terms of integration and organic growth. There'll be challenges, of course, but.
It's okay if I,
Yeah,
go? I
go
would
ahead,
just
go
say,
ahead.
like, we're worried about the same thing. And this is where you come back to that, having that long-term visibility to volume and to projects so that you can not only make the investments in the people and the types of talent to do the work, but you can operationalize the projects or the cadence of those projects. So they're not all happening at the same time. And you can have very transparent discussions to say, hey, look, we can't do all of this year. And might we suggest we stagger this here, and so that you can optimize what you've got in terms of resources. Ian.
Yeah, I just want to build on this point, actually. I'm Ian Edwards, the CEO of Atkins Realis. We're a proud Quebec-based company, 112 years old. And the key issue here, which I think Quebec has right, is a clear plan that's communicated, and we know what the demand on our services as an engineering company is going to be. But there's no doubt about it. I mean, the globe produces about $2 trillion of infrastructure. And to meet net zero, we need to produce $8 trillion. So the demand on services of companies such as ourselves is going to be really, really high. Therefore, the more organized governments and states can be, the clearer it is and the clearer we can plan for those demands. So I just wanted to build on that.
Great, thank you. I think we had a question over here.
Okay, my name is Emmanuel Tavernier, and Oxy Initiative is my company. So basically, we are building a platform to measuring every carbon footprint for every company. And right now we export our platform because there is not enough market in Quebec. Or I mean, there is a lot of market, but no one of the SMEs do the carbon footprint. So my question is how we can encourage this company to do the international reporting, to be able to sell it more in Europe or US, because now the reporting is mandatory for all this country. So if we want to empower the company to sell it outside Canada and Quebec, we need to encourage more them to having international reporting. So how we can encourage them. So.
You're asking how we can help Quebec-based company to export their services internationally?
I will say how we can encourage this company, Quebecois company, to getting the international reporting to be able to export more their product, especially because we have hydroelectricity. So it's very less carbon intensive products that produce in Quebec. So if we're going to a European country, there is a European taxes now based on the carbon intensive products. So it would be nice to encourage the company in SMEs, especially in Quebec, to having this international reporting. So how we can do that?
Well, I'm not sure I follow the question fully, but you want to make sure what the SMEs companies report their footprint internationally. Okay, well, I would change the standard. Okay, well, I think that given that we want to export product services, it works both ways. I think bilateral arrangement, like traceability, for example, on the passport. We announced last year here the passport for batteries. So I think we need to incorporate our products into the international kind of a supply chain. By doing so, we'll do that. We have the carbon tax with California, which works right now. We're different than the rest of Canada, but it works, and I think that will also allow the companies to be more proactive internationally. So I think we clearly want our SMEs to be involved in the international market. This is why we have Investissement Québec. They help a lot on the trade side. And to do that, we need to obey to the international kind of regulations. So a mixture of both, I would say.
Okay, we have a question up here.
Well, I'm not sure if it's a comment or a question. Martin Bureau, Senexen Ultra. You mentioned critical elements extraction. Right. You mentioned, of course, hydroelectricity and many other important focus of our province. And my question is, can we put the water at the center of this initiative. Extracting critical elements needs water a lot. Hydroelectricity as well. So I believe there would be a place for an innovation hub focused on water preservation and water conservation and water treatments, well, restoration or reuse. We have a lot of water, as we saw in the video this morning, but not that percentage is all renewable. It's actually a small fraction of it that is. Once it gets to the rivers and the St. Lawrence rivers in particular, it's not renewable anymore. So I believe there should be a focus at the basis of all this because it's really our foundation at the bottom, our most precious resources.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think as I look at our innovation zone, one of the effort we have right now is in Rimouski. Rimouski, we have a Université du Québec at Rimouski, who does a lot of work on the water side. So we are looking to establish ourselves because water, what I call the blue zone, can involve, could be aquaculture, could be all kinds of resourcing water as well. So we are looking to work with academics in Rimouski to see if we can do something there. Clearly, we have a lot of water and we can use it.
Question here.
Stéphanie Vaillancourt, Atkins Realis. My question is, the subject was private sector and collaboration. You announced a project in Mauricie with tests. It was really a change with the model with Hydro-Québec. Is it something you're planning to do more?
Interesting question. This is called auto production.
Exactly.
The current law right now, and I earlier didn't fully answer the question, but we need to make some changes in the regulation of Hydro-Québec and Régie d'énergie for those who are close to the situation. Right now in Quebec, we are allowed to auto-produce electricity if it's used for a single purpose.
But then
So to Test Canada, for those who are not familiar, Test Canada is a concept. We're going to be using 150 megawatt of Hydro-Québec coupled with 1,000 megawatt of intermittent energy, 800 of which will be megawatt will be wind, 200 will be solar, producing through the electrolyzer 500 megawatt, 60,000 tons of hydrogen, which is interesting. So that is allowable outside Hydro-Québec because it's on private land and it's connected. It's connected to a single source, a single use, which will be the electrolyzer. So therefore, right now it's a difficult situation because in Quebec, some companies want to expand. There's no megawatt available, but on their property, if they can do renewable, they're not going to do dams, of course, but they can do renewable, solar or wind. They can do it, but we call it behind the meter. Now, will Hydro-Québec evolve at one point to do corporate PPAs? That's a different question. We're into it right now because that triggers other elements as to how you grid manage. Because the grid management of Hydro-Québec is very, very, and I think the power of Hydro-Québec is the grid. So we don't want to fool around with that. So therefore, corporate PPA, if they get done, will have to be done in conjunction with Hydro-Québec managing the different sources of production. But auto production, if it's used for a single purpose, I think that's going to be.
Thank you. It was an interesting project. When I read, I said, okay, it's at the limit of.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay, I think we have a question over here, the lady in yellow. Yeah, no, it's just coming. It's coming.
Hi, so my name is Laura. I'm here with the YAL delegation from Quebec. And when you answered the question from Dunsky, I believe, you answered that the major issue was execution. And then you said, and the First Nation issue. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, we made clear in Quebec that because the expansion on renewable will come from wind and solar, basically, the primary will come on First Nation territory. And we said publicly that we will not do a single project if it's not socially acceptable with the First Nation. The First Nation have clearly asked us, rightfully so too, to become partners in some of these projects. Now, First Nation in Quebec, as other places in the world, were beneficiaries before. Now we want to make them partners. Well, we need to walk the talk. So to make that happen, of course, we need to sit down with them to look at how we're going to incorporate them. And we talked about that this morning with Heather. How are we going to incorporate them into the value proposition? So we're likely going to have some joint venture projects, which will include Hydro-Québec, can include the First Nations and also municipalities. There's probably some mayors around here that would want to be involved as well. So when we look at wind farms, for example, to get the wind farms socially acceptable, there's nothing better to have the municipality to be part of the project, because they can in turn convince the community. That's a good thing for the economic development. So we will have to work with them very, very, very tightly. And we're doing that as we speak.
I'll just add, I think, and for those of you who aren't from Canada, we have a commitment to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples as equal partners in these large infrastructure projects. And historically, it's been the developer that has taken the burden. But what you're starting to see is that trickle down into all the different players and stakeholders that are part of this ecosystem, and rightly so. And we were just talking about some of the work that we're doing. We're on a journey too to do this properly, to learn. And we come back to the resource, the people element, the talent element, and we're having discussions around running. Typically, we run STEM camps for girls. We call it the GE Girls STEM camps. And we take grade 8 girls, so 14, 15-year-olds, and we run them through a program in the summer to spark their interest, the art of the possible in terms of engineering and science, because there's clearly this is going to be solved through a lot of technology. And now the thought is, how do we take that program and we pivot it and we run it through different First Nations communities for boys and girls, and start to build that capacity, that spark. So they're not only participating from an equity standpoint and otherwise, but doing the work, and we're developing the right talent. So just one example of some of the things that are starting to percolate, because we have a responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. And the First Nation, and the issue we have in Quebec is that talk about the critical minerals. In a lot of the territories, we have mines and we have dams, we have wind farms. At one point, you have to be careful as to how quickly you develop that. So we clearly have a dialogue going on right now for a number of years with the community, the various community. We have 20 communities in Quebec, and we have to work with them determining what is the sequence of projects, because you can't do everything at once. I like to go fast, but if you go too fast, then you're gonna have a social disruption. So I think we're getting in the right place to work with the community. Say, okay, we'll do this project. We'll do it together, then we'll sequence the project. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos.
Agreed. Cadence and is everything. Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to give you one last question. So you've been at COP now for a few days, and you're going to be here for a little while longer. Just, impressions, the good, the bad.
Well, I came here for basically 3 reasons. One is to help to support through Investissement Quebec, the Quebec-based companies that want to expose themselves, and getting some networking done with the community, international community. I think that's working very well. B, I came here to meet some of the foreign companies that they can help us in Quebec to be better. And I also came to educate myself, because I clearly am new in the energy world. I've been the Minister of Energy now for a year and a half, so they can always learn depending regardless of your age. So I came here as well to witness what's going on in the world community, and frankly, I find it's very exciting. It's very exciting from both to learn, but also to realize how we can use that knowledge to get Quebec at a better place than we are right now.
Learning with intent.
That's
So
right.
I appreciate that. No, it shows humility. I think that's terrific. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If just one last before we wrap up. Okay, with that, thank you for
Heather.
joining us.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Pleasure.